speaker today needs no introduction to an audience in Dublin or anywhere in Ireland. She has worked for our cause and articulated the Republican message with great skill and determination, and has won widespread support for Sinn Féin, most recently in the general election in this state. And she's a woman who keeps her neck curtains very, very white, I can tell you. Would you please welcome the main speaker for our 1916 centenary commemoration, the Vice President and Deputy Leader of Sinn Féin, Mary Lou McDonald, TD.
Louise, and it is very true about my neck curtains. Everyone in Cabra will tell you that for a fact. So is more an ordum fen so live a Camora Cade Blian Iri amach na Cosca. Tomage Balahansa in Omos do agus Igwivne ar tir gorhi bossaha. Quivnomish Comar an lucha dar lechra hui growing a vig strakels son Saoirse na Heran or son. I'm very, very proud to stand here before you today on this, the 100th anniversary of the 1916 Rising, and remember all those involved in this momentous event in the history of our country. And we remember too with pride all of those who have fought and struggled and died for Irish freedom in every generation. Let us never forget that for each of those that made the ultimate sacrifice, there was a family left behind, that there were friends, that there were comrades, all who today still feel the painful loss of their loved one and friend. But they live on in our hearts and in our memories. Their stories are told around the fireside, and their heroism is remembered in song and verse. So we do not mourn them, we celebrate their lives, and they continue to inspire us. And we will never allow their memory or their sacrifice to be forgotten. 100 years ago, an eclectic group of rebels came together in the cause of Irish freedom. They were nationalists, Republicans, language activists, trade unionists, and members of the women's liberation movement. But at the heart of it, they were all just ordinary women and men, yet united in one dream of an independent Ireland free from British rule, taking its place amongst the nations of the world. Although the rebellion was planned as a nationwide rising, it was here in Dublin that it had its greatest impact. And the story of the rising is etched into the very fabric of our great city. From the founding of the Irish Volunteers in Parnell Square, to the smuggling of German guns at Howth, from the strongholds of the GPO and Boland's Mill, to the last stand in Moore Street, and then the final tragic act of the execution of our leaders in Kilmainham jail. Dublin was the anvil on which freedom was forged by force of arms. Of all of those who were out in 1916, James Connolly gave the highest honours to the women. They too endured the ferocious British onslaught. They too shared the same hunger, the same thirst, and even the same wounds as their men. And yet women became the forgotten heroes in this great endeavour. But today we are proud to remember Margaret Skinner, Kathleen Lynn, Winifred Carney, and all of the other revolutionary women who manned the barricades and fought beside their men. The actions that took place in Dublin over those 6 turbulent days by an outnumbered but determined group of rebels battling the forces of an empire shone as a beacon of hope to all oppressed people across the world. That this little country, our country, amongst the greatest countries of the British Empire, had the nerve, the guts, the audacity, to take on the greatest empire the world had ever seen remains a testament to the courage of our people. The Rising became a catalyst for other freedom struggles across the world, inspiring other oppressed people who laboured under the shackles of the British Empire, encouraging them to break free of their chains and not just dream of liberty, but to achieve it. Sinn Féin is a Republican party, and we make no apology for it. Sinn Féin proudly remains the only All-Ireland Republican party. And we want to end partition. Partition imposed on our country by Britain, created not with our consent, nor by the democratic will of the people, but by a threat of immediate and terrible war. And Britain left us with a dysfunctional, gerrymandered statelet in the north and a reactionary state in the south that set aside the dream and hope of the Republic. Our vision for a united Ireland is founded on the very ideals of the 1916 proclamation, first heard by a small crowd of curious Dubliners gathered around Padraig Pearse as he read it aloud from the steps of the GPO. The ideals of the proclamation, which guarantee religious and civil liberty, which champion equal rights and equal opportunities for all our citizens, irrespective of creed or colour or gender, and the cherishing of the children of the nation equally. Those are a statement, those enshrine our core values. And I wish in this centenary year that I could say that these ideals for which the women and men of 1916 fought, that they had been achieved. I wish I could tell you that Ireland is a better place. I wish I could tell you that we now live in the Republic dreamed of by Connolly and Pearse and Markievicz and Lynn. I wish I could tell you that there are no longer elites and golden circles, that there is equality and fairness. But sadly, I cannot, nor can anyone make these claims. You all know from your daily struggles. You all know that we are a long, long way from fulfilling the noble ideas of that proclamation. Sinn Féin, in the last general election, stood against old politics. The old politics of parties that delivered crisis, austerity and inequality. And we offered people a real alternative. An alternative to the May Féinism of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour. The May Féinism which has seen families thrown out on the street, saw them bring in austerity taxes and water charges, saw them punish the vulnerable but protect the elites. And a politics which allowed toxic banks to bankrupt our country and force us then to pay for their mistakes. That politics has failed you. That politics has failed Ireland. And there can be, friends, no greater contrast than that between the unprincipled, selfish, self-interest of these parties and the selflessness of the volunteers of 1916. So we in Sinn Féin stand against the old politics, and we stand against those parties that delivered crisis and inequality. And let us be clear that we will not prop up a Fine Gael or a Fianna Fáil-led government. We will not support a government of the parties that created and sustained the crisis. The policies of these parties are the problem, and these parties are not the solution. So you came out in your tens of thousands and voted for Sinn Féin, and I want to thank everyone who did that. And I want to promise you that Sinn Féin will always stand with the people. We will stand for what is right and fair. We will oppose austerity and hardship in the north and in the south, and we will demand and create a fair recovery for all. Ná déanamais darmad gurb í seo comóra cúig bliain is trocha na stailcina ocrais. Death nóra furbás son na hÉireann. In this year of 2016, we also commemorate another watershed moment in Irish history. This year marks the 35th anniversary of the H-Block hunger strike. And we remember with pride the 10 brave men who made the ultimate sacrifice in defiance of Thatcher's policy of criminalisation of the Republican struggle. There are still those today who attempt to criminalise Republicans of all generations. There are those in the media and those who claim to be historians who question the motives of the women and men of 1916 and wish to criminalise their struggle too. These revisionist historians distort history and deny the very truths that they claim to seek. They apply different standards of scrutiny to the oppressor as to the oppressed. And they expect us to apologise for fighting for our freedom, for standing up against injustice. Well, they'll get no apology from us. Revisionists want to rewrite Irish history. They want us to believe that the British involvement in Ireland was normal, was acceptable and even welcome. Let me tell you, it was none of those things. And James Connolly spoke for us all when he proudly and defiantly stated at his court-martial that the British government has no right in Ireland, never had any right in Ireland, never can have any right in Ireland. Republicanism is bigger, more popular and more relevant to people's daily lives now than ever before, and we are closer to achieving that which previous generations could only dream of. So it's perhaps fitting that on the 35th anniversary of the death of Bobby Sands, that there will be elections to the Assembly in the North. And I want to extend our welcome to Martin McGuinness, who has led our team in the Assembly and the Executive with such bravery and with such integrity. Thank you, Martin, for that. And in those elections, we will be looking for an increased mandate for Republicans to oppose Tory cuts, to protect public services, and to continue to be a driving force for progressive measures in the Executive. We will also continue to build relations and work to reconcile communities and to build an inclusive society respectful of both the orange and the green. And by helping to bridge these differences, we can all work together as Irish men and Irish women for the common good. And the new dispensation of peace and justice created by the peace process and the Good Friday Agreement gives us, for the first time in a real way, the opportunity to bring change across this entire island by exclusively peaceful and democratic means. And that is some achievement. And this generation of Republicans, led in particular by Gerry Adams and Martin McGuinness, must take enormous, enormous credit for that. So on this day of national commemoration, we stand here humbled by the sacrifices of the women and men of 1916. We owe them a very great debt, a debt that can only be repaid if our generation of Republicans, with the proclamation and its ideals to guide us, can make good the promise of 1916 and help build the republic for which they fought and died. We can honour them too by preserving the last tangible links to this heroic generation. The 1916 historic revolutionary quarter of the GPO and Moore Street area is part of our national heritage. It must be placed under the protection of the state. It cannot be left to the vagaries of developers and speculators. And it is shocking that past and present government have allowed this area of national significance to fall into disrepair, ruin and decay. How utterly disrespectful to the memory and sacrifice of 1916 is that. So we want to welcome very warmly the victory in the courts, led by the families and led by our own Colm O'Mora, who I'm sure is here, that has now saved this area for generations to come. And it proves that people power has given seed to what will be an enduring memorial to the women and men of 1916. So let's show our appreciation for the families and relatives and for Colm for their work and their victory in the courts. So, my friends, my fellow Republican women and men, let us stand together now. Let us stand with the same pride, with the same defiance and the same courage of Constance Markievicz, a rebel, unconverted and unconvertible, pledged as a rebel to that one thing, a free and independent Ireland. Let us show the same selfless courage and commitment of those rebels. Let us stand with Sinn Féin and be part of a new rising to build a new republic. And only then can we have truly honoured the women and the men of 1916. Up the Republic, an Phoblach de Bu, agus gur míle míle maith agaibh go léir.
Gur maigat, Mary Lou. Before we conclude, I want to thank everyone involved in today's event, and I would like to personally thank Micheál McDonagh for all of his help and for all of the work that he has put in. I'd like to thank the Dublin Easter Commemoration Committee, the Dublin Colour Party, the Rising Phoenix Band, the Cabra Historical Society, Finglas Historical Society, North Dublin 1916 comrades, and all who participated in our graveside ceremony. The main Dublin Sinn Féin function follows immediately after this in Doyle's Pub in Phibsborough, and you are of course all welcome. The National Graves Association will take up a bucket collection after today's commemoration. And finally, a reminder that the Dún Laoghaire commemoration takes place tomorrow, assembling at Baker's Corner at 2:30 p.m. and then on to Dean's Grange Cemetery. Gur míle maith. I now call on the Rising Phoenix Band to play our Glasnevin.